Hey everyone, Gaijin here. Man, oh man, where do I even get started with this? Alright, so here's the thing. Originally, I had thought about putting this video out back when it was going to be far more relevant. I mean, at this point, I'll be surprised if anyone's even watching this video. We've all come to the conclusion that this movie in particular is bad, but I wanted to wait at least a week before I put anything out for two very specific reasons. The first of which being, I'm going to spoil the ever-loving crap out of this movie. So I kind of wanted to wait and let people who want to watch it, before coming here and we just talk about everything about it. And the second thing is that I walked out of that theater pretty angry. It was a mixture of just a lot of anger and a lot of disappointment, but I wanted to wait on it because I wanted to be less angry, though don't get me wrong, I'm going to be angry in this video, and a bit more collected, a little bit more organized with my thoughts. But no, the biggest gripe that I have with this particular movie is its story. Now, I know what you're probably going to say. You're probably going to be saying, Gaijin, it's a G.I. Joe movie. Did you even bother watching Retaliation or Rise of Cobra? You knew what you were getting into, so what'd you expect? Honestly, I didn't have any expectations going into this, but I will say, if you were going into this movie to possibly get a more nuanced interpretation of the G.I. Joe franchise to match up to the kind of people that we are in our Lord's year of 2020, you're gonna be horribly disappointed. But the other thing too is that if you came into this movie looking for all that wonderful 80s camp that actually makes the franchise really interesting to watch even in this day and age, you're not gonna find that either. You're not gonna find anything that made G.I. Joe good, ironically or unironically. And what kills me is that there have been a multitude of other franchises that got their start in the 80s and we kind of thought would be locked into the 80s, but no, they transversed it. Like, freaking the Masters of the Universe He-Man Netflix series that came out not that long ago. I know people are gonna be railing me up and down saying, oh, it was terrible because the women were too beefy, or there was barely any He-Man or barely any Skeletor. Dude, I'm sorry, but this is how you do 80s interpretation for the modern day, alright? Because for one, the stupid camp is still there. The puns are there. The jokes are there. It's all still very camp, but at the same time, there is so much nuance with these characters now. Some of the new perspectives that they take. And this is goodies and baddies coming together for a greater purpose. And they're all working together towards this goal, and it's like, this blows my brain out. Because it's different, it's changed, it's nuanced, it's deep. My point here is that every single one of these 80s franchises that were just marketed to sell toys, whatever, they absolutely can be made into modern day masterpieces based on what we expect out of the 2020s. I mean, for crying out loud, even some of the movies like Retaliation, or Rise of Cobra, and even some of the old animations in the early 2010s with G.I. Joe, they managed to have some camp and more complexity, and I thought that kind of evolved what the franchise was. But no, this is the thing that I just cannot tolerate about this movie, and I thought we were done with this, and that this movie, the Snake Eyes movie of 2021, is chock full of so many stupid 80s Asianisms that I can't understand how. I can't understand how or why this was made in this particular way, because it feels like I'm watching a movie that came out in like 1983 to 1985, except it's supposed to be taking place in the modern day. And I know that may not make any sense, but let me kind of explain. So, back in the olden days of the 1980s, back when, man, I was born around that time, and now I just realize how old I'm becoming, there was this big craze about Japan even then. We were having a better understanding as Americans, as people in the United States, to what Japan was. We got to see their everyday life better and better. Not only because of everything that happened post-World War II, but also the trade boom that happened. But the problem with that is that we saw Japan in a very limited way, and we took that wholesale. If you go back and watch the video that I did, granted it's a long video, but the video I did with Kyle Shibuya, we talked about a documentary that came out in the 1970s, and how it's just not even how Japan actually is, or even was for that matter. So we had a very skewed idea of what Japan was at that time, and of course there's things like honor to the family, honor to the business, honor to your boss. It's just, we'll get to that word in a hot second, but my point here is that we had a very different idea of what Japan was at that time, and it made sense for that time. There was so much more unknown. Also, at the same time, there was this big ninja craze going on, but I blamed that mostly on this hyper-focus on the Togakure-ryu school of ninjutsu. Now, I hesitate to say that these days, because these days, the Togakure-ryu is actually under a lot of scrutiny. Not only when it comes to their lineage, but also the fact that the Togakure-ryu school, it is martial arts. But I hesitate to call it ninjutsu based on all of the different documents that we have now that pertain to what ninjutsu was back in the 1600s. So we have this weird understanding of Japanese society, which isn't really quite right, and then we have all of this bombastic, entertainment-worthy information about these hyper-flexible one-man army ninjas. They could just take out an entire group of baddies in one go. And therefore, we had things like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we had Storm Shadow, we had Snake Eyes, we had the 80s ninja, right? But the thing is that our interpretation of Japan has changed quite a bit. It's far less about honor, family, etc., and one-man army ninjas, and, you know, it's this idea of cool Japan. This is something that Japan themselves had put together to try and attract more people to come abroad, either to visit and spend tourist money, or to come over and work, or whatever. It's a way for Japan to get international attention, and it worked, especially during the anime boom of the 90s. What's kind of interesting is that in parts in this movie, you actually see some of the ideas of what cool Japan, the cool Japan campaign is. Like, when there's the transition from the United States to Japan in this movie, you see the Japan montage, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But in this particular case, it's like, here's some random taiko, here's some fan dancing geisha. Not geisha, by the way. Here's the Shibuya Scramble Crossing, you know what that is, right? Here's Tokyo Tower. Here's literally just Tokyo, because that's all Japan is, right? It's just Tokyo. I mean, what's kind of weird too is that there's tons and tons and tons of shots from the robot restaurant, which some of you may have heard of, and yeah, I kind of get it, and it's really, really cool. But my point here is that this kind of changed. Our idea, even our stereotypes of Japan had changed and evolved, right? Well, here's the thing. This 2021 film, which is supposed to take place in modern-day Japan, modern-day LA, the modern day in general, it is so stuck in these old freaking ideas of what Japan was thought to be in the 80s. And let me give you some examples. So let me just get to the one thing that I alluded to that just, it was the very first thing that made me absolutely hate this movie. So, Snake Eyes is working for this Yakuza group. This Yakuza group apparently can tell him where his father's killer went. This is a big revenge story. So it turns out that one of the members, who is good guy Storm Shadow, is actually a spy relaying other information about the Yakuza group to the Arashikage, which is the ninja clan that Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes comes from. We'll get to them. The head Yakuza guy hands him a gun, hands Snake Eyes a gun, and says, alright, kill him. And so he points the gun. Snake Eyes points his gun at good guy Storm Shadow, looks him in the eyes, and then turns around and this big old fight breaks out. And we've got a lot to talk about with this fight. But what kills me is that after all that, Storm Shadow's like, why didn't you shoot me? And then Snake Eyes, who was born and raised in the US, looks at him in the eye and says, I saw honor in your eyes. I hate this word. I hate this word, I hate this word, I hate this word. Get rid of it. I know there have been several other Asian and Asian American YouTubers who have talked about this movie, particularly in Mulan. I am so tired of seeing this word. Because it is just, it's this caulking for putting in word that means like morality or goodness or whatever. This is like, the word honor has become synonymous, even the 80s was synonymous with thing that is good in Asia. And I thought we were beyond this. I really thought we were beyond this. And what kills me is that they bring it around a second time. Because Storm Shadow looks in Snake Eyes' eyes and is like, I saw honor in your eyes too. And I'm like, you couldn't have said innocence, you couldn't have said kindness, you couldn't have said truth, good, or integrity. No, you had to say honor. Just, I hate this. This isn't a thing, alright? This isn't a thing. Loyalty is different. Loyalty is not honor, okay? Respecting elders, respecting your family, the concept of harmony. These things are not honor, alright? I just, end it. End this stupid patchwork utilization of the word honor. It's over, it's done. Please, stop making us look bad. Now, let's get into the second thing. Let me talk about the Yakuza in this a little bit. So, here's the thing. The Yakuza are established working in LA, and they're smuggling guns. Hold on to that thought, I'll come back to it in a minute. So, when that fight broke out that I told you about, back when Snake Eyes was like, oh no, honor, and then he just fights with Storm Shadow, it's like 2 against a million other Yakuza. Every single Yakuza in this movie is using a katana. Every single Yakuza member is using a katana. In LA, they're using a katana. Now, I'd like to imagine that a lot of you out there watching this video have at least heard of the Yakuza, know a little bit about Yakuza, and if you've ever played any of the Yakuza games, you already know how asinine this idea is. Modern day Japan, Yakuza, first of all, Yakuza don't fight all that much. They just don't. That's not good for business. But the other thing is too, when they do fight, it's things like their fists, like brass knuckles, bats, knives, and yeah, sometimes guns. Sometimes when they smuggle in like small firearms, like 9mm, something like that. But no, only katana. Only katana in this instance. And it kills me too because, like I said, they're smuggling guns. Guns! There's literally guns at their side when the fight starts, but no, everybody pulls out their katana, because we gotta melee this. It drives me insane. They're not gonna and can I talk really quick? Just a side tangent about the whole Yakuza thing, because this is another ism. It's a little bit of a newer Asian ism, but I want you to guess. I want you to guess what the Yakuza in the Snake Eyes movie were using to smuggle their small arms in. I'll give you time. Alright, time's up. They were using Maguro bluefin tuna. They were taking big old bluefin tuna, gutting them, taking the guts out, and putting small arms. They were putting like 9mm and like small Uzis into them. If you're not cringing at this point, let me try to explain why this is so upsetting. Maguro is $200 per pound, and these are big old fish. So effectively what this Yakuza group is doing is that they're actively losing money by taking these small arms that couldn't be worth that much money each and stuffing them into a fish worth at least $600 to $1,000. I'm sorry, these are small arms. You're not sneaking in nuclear weaponry or anything like that. This is the worst betrayal of the Yakuza I've ever seen. Okay, let me go back to the katanas for a second, because I'm not done. Boy, am I not done with this. So I want you to understand, katana are expensive. If you're gonna get good ones, like you can get factory-made ones for a couple hundred, but they're gonna break and bend after a few uses. General uses. And the other thing, too, is that there were far better swords out there that you could use. There are more modern swords that you could be using. But no, we're back to the old katana. Like, even if they were traditionally made, which these are fine pieces of art, but I'm sorry, Japan. Iron sand-based steel is not good steel. Get crucible steel at least, then make it. Also, newsflash really quick. Swords, to get in Japan, are just as hard to get as guns. And despite the fact that in this movie they're smuggling in guns, everyone's pulling. When they transition to Japan, all the Yakuza members are pulling out katana. Everyone's pulling out katana! That makes even less sense. Look, katanas were covered under the Swords and Firearms Possession Control Law of 1876. It has been a long time since katanas were able to be worn in public by anyone. And what kills me is that you can smuggle in a small 9mm gun. You can't smuggle in a freaking 4-foot katana. You can't. You're gonna get found out by the police real freaking quick. And God, the last thing about Yakuza and these freaking katana, during that fight scene that I mentioned a while back, by the end of it, a good guy Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes are in a truck, and the truck looks like a freaking pincushion with all these katana that were jammed in the sides. I'm like, no, there is no freaking way on earth that a katana is gonna be that sharp to pierce a truck. And not a simple 4x4. This is like lifting equipment truck. Ugh. Oh, and if you thought that the bad guys were the only ones being an idiot when it came to katanas, let's talk about the Arashikage for a hot second, because they are also predominantly only using katana. In fact, the penultimate moment of where I've just checked out of this movie was in this one line. And with Storm Shadow talking to Snake Eyes as he was giving him this beloved antique katana, he said, "It's easy to pull the trigger, but this is a weapon of honor." We're back to honor again! Let me explain something. Storm Shadow. The Arashikage are a clan of ninja, right? Don't ask me how clans even still exist in modern day Japan, because they don't. You're ninja. 1. What do you care about honor? There's loyalty. That is not honor. Every little bit of shinobi-isms that I've researched is just about getting the mission done. It is about being loyal to the person that has hired you, or the person you are a retainer to, or whatever. That's all it is. Shouldn't care about honor. 2. Your ancestors, Storm Shadow, have been using firearms for over 400 years! Potentially even longer than that. By my recollections, the first time that gunpowder technology was introduced to Japan was in the early 1200s when the Mongols were invading Japan twice. They brought over these sort of, I'll put up on screen here, I'm just losing my mind at this. They brought over bombs. I cannot believe for a moment that any sort of smart-minded shinobi wouldn't be utilizing black powder technology as soon as they gain access to it. Because here's a fun fact. Ninjas were some of the most technologically advanced operatives in the entirety of the country. When I say that they were the MacGyvers of Japan, I'm not kidding. You guys who watch my Witch Ninja series know this. Ninjas had long teppo rifles, they had small hand cannons, they had regular cannons, they had smoke bombs, they had flashbangs, they had landmines. You gotta be kidding me with this! Oh, and it doesn't end there too, because, like I said before, every member of the Arashikage, it's crazy to me. They're wearing Kevlar. It looks like Kevlar. That's really cool design. That's a really cool modern take. But they're still all using katana. And what's worse is that there are establishing shots outside of the Arashikage estate, out towards, like, the regular part of the city, when there are guards in this super high-tech armor, and they're standing around with old naginatas. And you might be thinking, oh, well, is it like a special steel? Is it like a sort of like vibro material? No, it's just regular old naginatas and katanas that you would see out of like the 14 to 1600s. And the penultimate of all of this is that there's an establishing shot of the war room. It's inside a traditional building, fine, it's whatever, I can buy that. But it's this old room, and you have this other room that's just glassed off, and it's got all this modern tech and everything. And right next to that is a glass case of 3 dozen katana. Not technologically advanced, not even moderately advanced, not even modern. It is just old katana just in this case, tons of them. And then, next to that, are 5 suits of old samurai armor that is serving no purpose in being there except to establish another stupid 80s Asianism. And I mean, there was a little sliver of hope in all this, because there are a couple of times where there's some really good, really authentic, like, ninjutsu things happening in this. But I mean, I remember the last thing I'm like, okay, this is either stupid tech or stupid magic, and I think it was stupid magic, and it was freaking Blind Master using the Kanon Gakure no Jutsu, which is the idea that you're holding in front of you sort of like camouflage cloth. I mean, that's the modern interpretation and wrong interpretation. The Kanon Gakure was little more than just trying to cover up all of your skin, like covering up your face and everything so people couldn't see in low light. But it's like, no, this is just wrapped around more 80s Asianisms and ninja pop culture of the time. This movie just felt like it was so stuck in the past, like embarrassingly stuck in the past, and without any of the positives to go with it, without like the 80s camp or anything like that. It's not endearing. It's not interesting. It's just completely deaf to the times. Maybe I'm just being a weeaboo that expects too much, but I watch Snake Eyes and I'm like, I'm just embarrassed. But despite all this negativity, I will say this, and I think I mentioned it once before, my brain's a little fuzzy with all the details right now, but there were a lot of moments in this movie that made for really, really good shinobi moments. And I don't want to spoil them here, because my patrons have actually voted for this month for me to actually make a Witch Ninja episode on Snake Eyes himself. I don't know how much I'll be able to cover because this is a 40-year-old franchise, but I will do my very best, because not only do I think Snake Eyes is just an incredibly good modern ninja even back in the 80s, but even in this movie that I just spent like a half hour tearing apart, there's a lot of good shinobi-isms in this that I definitely want to talk about. Oh, one more thing before you go. So in 2 weeks, the Obon season is going to get started. For those of you that don't know, it's basically like a Japanese Dia de los Muertos, but what's really cool are the dances, and I'm sure you've seen these before. There's a yagra, or basically this kind of like stage, and there's someone playing taiko on the top, and they're playing these songs that everybody dances to. Well, it's been 2 years since any of us have been able to go visit over in Japan. I miss it terribly, and I really miss Obon a whole lot, so I figured, what the heck, let's have our own. So in about a week and a half, depending when this video gets out, on Saturday, August 14th at 7 p.m. US Central, I'm going to be holding the very first ever Otaku Obon. But rather than having a whole bunch of Obon songs from like the 1950s that get played over and over again, I figured we'd take it one step further. In so many different games in anime, there are Obon-style songs that come from everything from Sergeant Frog to Dr. Slump to Yakuza. I mean, there's a ton of these different kinds of songs, so I figured, yeah, let's just make it a cute little event. So again, that's going to be Saturday, August 14th, 7 p.m. US Central Time. We're going to have the first ever Otaku Obon, and it's just going to be a great time. So again, thanks for watching, everyone. I hope to see you for that special stream, and until next time, this is Gaijin, signing out.